Welcome to the Hot Cage Podcast presented by Cage Wall. I'm John Franklin. This week on the podcast for May 28, 2013, the topics we will discuss include but are not limited to the retirement of Forrest Griffin, who John Jones wants to fight next, a new coach for the next season of Tough, and all the relevant fights from UFC 160. We'll be joined later in our podcast by Jason Cruz from MMAPayout.com, and we begin this podcast as we begin them all by me welcoming my tag team partner, as always, TJ Craig. TJ, how are you?
Great, John. I'm doing pretty good. There were some great fights this past weekend, so let's just jump right into it.
All right, let's jump right into the flurry. First up in the flurry, we're going to talk about Johnny Bones Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. They have been trading some verbal jabs on Twitter. So they want to fight each other, and it seems like everyone wants to see the two of them fight each other. So as it stands right now, I guess the question I'll pose to you here in a sec is why they're not fighting each other. Dana seems to have warmed up to it, saying in the post-fight scrum that, that fight makes sense. Everybody seems to want to see it, and Machida didn't look very impressive. So before I turn it over to you, I'm going to go ahead and read you the tweets. First off, Gustafsson said it's on. Johnny Bones, can't wait to get in that cage with you. John Bones Jones said, fighting me is not good for your image. To which Alexander Gustafsson said, if you think of what is good for your image, maybe you should continue to fight 185-pounders. So, not too shabby there by Gustafsson. What are your thoughts on this entire situation?
I mean, it basically is. Gustafsson wants to take a fight, so he's basically called him out, and I think it's good. When it first started, it was I can't wait to get in the ring with you, and with the reply that Jones gave, I thought it was trying to get him up a little bit. It's not good for your image. I mean, everybody wants to see this fight because I believe Gustafsson is the next person in line to match him up. So it's good taking a little jabs, gets the fight a little hyped up for all the fans. So it's good business.
Well, and they're both in Russia right now, so it kind of worked out. They tweeted some pictures of them kind of posing off at an event in Russia. I think they did a seminar or something like that. So, I mean, as it stands right now in the light heavyweight rankings for the UFC, it's Gustafsson's ranked number 2, but he's looked a lot more impressive than Machida has. He's looked a lot more impressive than pretty much everybody in the light heavyweight divisions look. So, I mean, the fight makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if they're delaying it because they're both young. I know Jones has the toe. That's the fight that I want to see. I'm not interested in Machida. I'm not really interested in Teixeira. We'll get to him a little bit later. While I do like him as a fighter, I just don't understand why it seems to me like they're sending him cupcakes. I don't know. This is the fight, right?
Yeah, it's the fight everybody wants to see. I think it's the most logical because Gustafsson brings a more interesting fight than Machida. The Machida versus Henderson fight wasn't that great. It was a little bit boring. He didn't put on a great show, and Gustafsson looks like, with the size and the way he's been finishing people, and it just makes sense to do that. So now, since we're talking about making fights, so on Saturday night, if you didn't read, Thompson was tweeting about this because he was at the fight, and what happened was a fan asked him what was next, and so his reply, and I'm going to go and jump into this. His reply is if Donald Cerrone was to win, and then that's probably the most logical next fight for him. And this is what it said. It said, I'm talking like who's next. I'm assuming like probably Cerrone. If he wins, I just beat KJ, so I don't see that happening. Nate's out for I don't know how long because of a suspension, so I don't really see anyone else at the top 10 that I think that are going to have me fight. I think Cerrone is the only option that will probably give me if he wins tonight. If he doesn't win, then I've already beat KJ. If it gets me the shot at the title, whoever they want me to fight. So in saying this, I think he's kind of right because everybody's lined up to fight. And I know, and I bring this up too because I know you've been all over Thompson. You think he should catapult and go right into the title shot. But after Saturday night with TJ Grant kind of dismantling Maynard, it's definitely he gets a shot. So what's next for Thompson? I believe that the Cowboy fight would be a great fight for him because I think it's a top 10 contender and it's somebody's out there. And Cowboy usually brings his fight. He had a little bit fallback with Pettis. But other than that, I mean, nobody's really finished him. He always brings that game. And Thompson, just the last time he was in the ring, just manhandled the ring. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, for me, I mean, you know where I stand with Josh Thompson. I think he should be fighting for the belt. But that aside, since he's not going to be fighting for the belt, honestly, what I look at in that division, now Gray Maynard fell to 5th. I don't know how I feel about that. He dropped 2 spots. He's still ahead of Donald Cerrone. So your top 6 is Cerrone, Maynard, Thompson, Grant, Pettis, who's a 45er right now, Melendez, and Henderson. So for me, obviously I'm not ready to see Thompson fight Melendez again. We've seen a lot of that. So in my perfect world, I'd like to see TJ Grant fight Josh Thompson, and the winner gets the winner of Melendez and Henderson. And I kind of say that hesitantly because I don't know that I want to see Ben Henderson another rematch. So I think Grant did earn the title shot in so much as he took Gray Maynard apart. I don't know that that should have been a title eliminator, though. So I would like to see TJ Grant fight Josh Thompson. But, again, I got problems with the Melendez-Henderson fight. What are your thoughts on what I said?
It's a different or a difficult scenario in that weight class because Pettis moving down, it kind of throws off some stuff because everybody has just fought, and then you have this title eliminator with Grant and Maynard that just happened. So everybody's either fought in the last couple of months or already has a fight planned. I'm with you. I don't want to see the Thompson-Melendez fight for the 4th time. That's just nonsense. So, maybe it is a TJ Grant, a Thompson fight for the number 1 contendership. But then again, if you do that, then if you go Henderson, and Melendez one more time, it's like a broken record. And saying that, I think with everybody with the fights lined out, I think if I was Cerrone and I'm pretty much a Cowboy fan, I would call for this fight too because this can only help him and Thompson. If he goes in and handles Cerrone like he did his last fight, then that would just put him right there as the number 1 contender.
I agree. I guess, and it's funny that Anthony Pettis decided to move down to 145 to look for a shot because he'd be getting the shot right now. I mean, he obviously has earned it more so than TJ Grant has. So that's where it gets weird. If Anthony Pettis was still in this division, not training for Jose Aldo right now, but training for Benson Henderson, then we could put Grant and Thompson together, and that's perfect. Winner gets the winner of Pettis and Henderson. There you go. Maybe Gilbert Melendez fights Donald Cerrone. I don't know. Or whoever. Maybe he fights Gray Maynard. Whatever the case may be. Actually, I think they both fight. I don't think they both fight at AKA. I think one of them fights, but they both are in San Jose right now. Anyway, moving on. Let's get to tough. Ronda Rousey was all set to fight Kat Zingano and coach against her, and then Kevin Aioli of Yahoo Sports is reporting that Kat Zingano. Funny thing happened on the way to the tough set. Kat Zingano got an injury. She has a pretty severely injured knee and will now be replaced by Miesha Tate. So at the end of the day, we all get what we want in terms of hype and in terms of ratings. UFC gets what they want. Miesha Tate gets what she wants. Ronda Rousey likes beating up Miesha Tate, so I'm sure she gets what she wants. Everybody gets what they want except for Kat Zingano. So how do you feel about this? I mean, obviously there's not too much really against Zingano's out, and then here comes Miesha.
Unfortunately, it was just a bad accident on Kat's part. I think she immediately went right into surgery. So yeah, she's going to be out. I mean, unfortunate for her because this was her chance to make a run for the belt. Now Miesha Tate's going to step in. But listen, here the fact is, everybody wanted to see this beforehand. They know they don't like each other. As a matter of fact, that's putting it lightly. They fucking can't stand each other. So it's going to put asses in seats in front of the television during the tough, and it's going to sell out a pay-per-view. So exactly, everybody gets what they want, and then they're going to make some fucking money off of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to, I mean, obviously there's definitely money to be made there, but I think that Kat earned the title shot. Obviously you can't push back your shooting and all that kind of stuff. It's just
not only that, I mean, with a knee injury of that, if she's had surgery on it, I mean, she's not going to be ready for at least probably 6 months, if I'm guessing. So I mean, you can't wait that long for Kat. I mean, she's gonna have to come back and probably get one more fight and then go for the champion for the belt. I mean, for real, it was very unfortunate. I mean, you talking about some bad luck. Kat got some bad luck today. She must have been. They call her the Black Cat because she's got some bad luck right now.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, like you said, you'd like to have her be able to walk back into a title shot, but even in terms of rehabbing the knee, it'd probably be best if she takes it to a warm up fight before that. She's probably gonna end up fighting Liz Carmouche. So push Carmouche on the shelf for a little bit longer, but it's just an unfortunate situation all around. I mean, she really looked great against Misha, finished her, and obviously now we have to wait to see Cat fight again. But we get what we want in terms of a tough coaches. So
yeah, some shit talking that's going to go on. So talking about some more shit talking, let's move on to Michael Bisping and Luke Rockhold. Basically, Luke called out Michael Bisping, and they've been going back and forth. Bisping saying you need to win a fight before you call me out, and then he even made a statement. I've sparred with Luke Rockhold, and let's just say I'm the unofficial Strikeforce champion. Said he wasn't impressed by him at all. He doesn't really want the fight. But let's be honest here. I mean, yeah, he was a Strikeforce champion, and he got beat by Vitor Belfort. That was, that's been on some TRT. That's been running through people. I mean, we can't dismiss what Luke Rockhold did in the Strikeforce. And Bisping is just being Bisping. He doesn't think he's up to his potential, but I'm going to have to disagree and think that I'd like to see that fight.
I mean, I think it'd be a hell of a fight. I think they're kind of peas in a pod in terms of the way they fight. They're cut from similar cloth. Neither one of them can apparently block a goddamn head kick, and so. But also, they both like to stand up. They both like to strike. They both got the legs and the hands. So I like this fight a lot. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think that I don't know that Michael Bisping, and I probably should research this more before I talk out of my ass, but why start now? I don't think Michael Bisping's ever been a champion. Obviously, Luke Rockhold has, and in a right below top tier organization. So while Bisping, was the unfortunate beneficiary of the fact that Anderson Silva's been at the top of his division if Anderson Silva was in Strikeforce, obviously Luke Rockhold would have never been a champion either. So I think it's a little more even than Bisping wants to kind of call it, but I think it's a good fight. I think they should, like I said, I think they have a lot more that unites them than divides them. I think they should get around and maybe talk about what it's like to get kicked in the head by Vitor Belfort before they want to break each other's balls. So.
Yeah, I mean. Exactly, and we've talked about this before with Bisping. He does enough to get right there to like the number one spot, and then he just can't push himself over the edge to get the title fight. I mean, he's a non-champion, and he just for any reason when the big fights are happening that he needs to win, he just can't pull off the win. So him talking trash about Luke Rockhold, I mean, it's kind of gets me excited because I want to see where he stands up with him.
I agree. I think it'll be a hell of a fight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let you do your next headline because I want to end on mine. So go ahead with your next one, and then we'll end with my third.
Listen, there's nothing more I hate in this world than somebody trying to blame somebody else for the demise of themselves or a loss. And this is what I'm talking about. Bigfoot Silva has blamed the referee for an early stoppage, that it was illegal blows, and that it was all his fault because of that. What he said was in the press conference was, I do agree the fight was stopped too early. My way of thinking is that the same applies to athletes who are penalized when they do something wrong or illegal, and should also apply to referees when they do something wrong. They too should be penalized. I don't want to say too much. I'd rather you each just watch the fight playback. It's clear watching that took several illegal blows to the back of your neck. I told you this before the next morning when I saw this tweet. I said I think he needs to go back and watch the fucking film, because when he's on, he gets that combo from the left to the right and takes a shot, goes down, and he's on his stomach. He takes the shots to the side of the head and then goes limp. Takes one, maybe two shots to the back of the neck, but that's not because they weren't illegal. That's because he was knocked out again on the mat. So I think in the last two fights, Silva's landed like 3 punches on Cain Velasquez. Listen, you got beat, you got knocked out. Just look at the people in the face and say, listen, it wasn't my night. I got beat. Let's move on. Because I don't think it was an early stoppage. Clearly, he was damaged on the punch and then on the ground when he was taking shots to the side of the head. So if anybody needs to watch the film, I think Bigfoot needs to go back and watch it and try to make some different moves if he ever faces Cain again.
I hope he never faces Cain again, first off. Second off, I agree with you completely. I think that he's, I don't know what he was doing when maybe he was too concerned with where he was getting hit in his head, and he should have been a little more concerned with that he was getting hit in his head, because he made no attempts to be an offensive or offensively defensive, that even makes any sense, fighter in terms of, the reason why they stopped the fight is because he wasn't doing a damn thing, not because he was necessarily out or because he was, they were looking to protect him. Now, in fairness to what he said, now here's where I kind of part company with him a little bit, is that I do honestly agree with what he said. Referees need to be penalized. In this case, I don't think the referee should have been penalized, but what he was saying had a lot of merit. It just didn't have a lot of merit with what he was, with the subject he was talking about himself. You're right. I did count one strike to the back of the head. I don't know if it was after they'd already called it. It was later in the strike sequence. But, you and I, man, we get caught up in this all the time. What I say is, if a referee stops a fight, and I'm not saying you disagree with this, but I'm saying we talk about this all the time. I say that if a referee stops a fight at strike 10, and you complain, strikes 11 through 20 were coming. You were doing nothing to stop strikes 11 through 20, 25, 30. Like, you're not showing me that you were going to stop any of those strikes. So, yeah, did he maybe stop it at 10 when he should have stopped it at 13? Okay, I'll give you that. But did you not block 0 through 10? You have to give me that. So if I'm going to concede to you that maybe you had a little fight left in you, you have to concede to me that you weren't showing it to anybody. So that's why the fight got stopped.
Right.
So I don't know, moving forward, to me, when you protest that quickly, it's like if you put as much energy into your fight as you put into your protest, maybe it wouldn't have got stopped.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, so here's what we're going to end on in terms of the flurry. It was kind of this was a pretty substantial thing to happen in the history of MMA. So this week, at the end of UFC 160, at the beginning of the post-fight press conference, Dana White announced that Forrest Griffin is retiring from MMA. He is not quite sure what his next move is going to be. He, there's a lot of options out there for him. Obviously, he's a very personable guy. So I guess my question to you is, and part of the reason why Forrest cited for retiring was he said, he's had to pull out of a lot of fights and people are banking on him. And the joke kind of is, whenever fighters have to pull out of fights, the old joke is, they're making posters and then they got to make new posters when I pull out. That's not the reason why that's not the huge issue, but what do you think about Forrest Griffin in terms of his legacy, and was it time for him to go?
I think so. I think with his last couple fights, with the Tito Ortiz fight and then the Anderson Silva fight, he did win the championship, but after that, he was starting to slow down, and you can call what you want to, but the kid's been in there in some serious wars. He never backed down from anybody, and he would just bang with you like no other. So, in saying that, I think it was probably he knows when it's time. You definitely know when it's time to step away, and that's what he did. And I give him a lot more respect for him retiring than him coming into a ring and getting blasted when we see that. So, I definitely give him respect for retiring, and I think it's the time for him.
I agree. I think that it was definitely, like you said, time for him to go. I don't really know what to make of his legacy. I kind of got into it with a few people on Twitter in terms of whether or not he's a Hall of Famer.
Here's the deal.
Hold on. If you start to read the resume, he's a Hall of Famer. Now, the problem with simply reading the resume and that determining his Hall of Fame status is that he is. It doesn't tell the complete story. He beat Shogun. Shogun was injured. Shogun came back and just completely destroyed him. He's beaten a lot of these guys. Beat Rampage when he wasn't Rampage anymore. Beat Tito when he wasn't Tito anymore. So I guess my question to you is, first of all, he's going into the Hall of Fame at the Fan Expo with Stephan Bonnar. So unless they're kind of doing some sort of, interesting kind of thing where they want to, sort of induct the fight. It's kind of like, are we going to put an album into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or are we going to put a band? So I don't know, man. Tell me do you think he's a Hall of Famer? And if so, on what merit?
I think both of these come, and it's almost too. He's putting both of these guys in the Hall of Fame, and it's almost that you can almost put the fight into the Hall of Fame, because that fight almost single-handedly saved the UFC moving forward. I mean, if you take it back, I absolutely think that these two guys deserve in the Hall of Fame, and I'll tell you why. Because nobody, besides a few of us out there, even knew what the UFC was until this tough came along, and you saw this fight. That these two guys beat the shit out of each other for 15 minutes, and it was absolutely great. It basically saved and brought forth fans that weren't even fans before. That fight carried the UFC to where it is tonight. You could say that was probably one of the top two monumental moments in UFC history. And if without that fight, who knows if me and you would even be sitting here right today doing a podcast talking about the UFC, because maybe it only had another year left in its bank account before they were going to pull the rug, and then all of a sudden you got this going. So absolutely, I think this is these two guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame just for that fight and just for bringing the crowd that they brought to watch the UFC.
I agree. It gets tough, man. Again, it's the UFC. It's their Hall of Fame. They can do whatever the hell they want. So if they think the guys have merit, I think that you're right. Sometimes it's funny. It kind of gets overblown, I guess. The actual importance of that fight, and then when you start to really think about it, you're like, well, you can't overblow it, because that fight may be the biggest fight in the history of the UFC. It may have changed the course of it. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to bring in the senior writer for MMA Payout. I think I might have just given him a promotion. You can follow him at Dilettante. He is the mighty and prolific Jason Cruz. Jason, let's get started just by, I'm going to pose a few questions to you. First of all, let me get your feelings on Forrest Griffin's legacy, and what do you think is next for him?
Well, I definitely think he Forrest Griffin is deserved of the Hall of Fame. I think that he has a place somewhere within the UFC, whatever it is, if it's an emeritus status or he does something kind of like on the lines of Chuck Liddell. He's a definite ambassador for the sport, and I definitely think that we will see him around. And by the way, it was a good decision for him to retire without trying to push another fight on the fan.
And what's interesting about that is I've read some things recently that Dana White's starting to tip his hand a little bit, that there's going to be life after Dana in the UFC. I want to get both your opinions on this, and I'll go to TJ first. It seems like the writing's a little bit on the wall for the next person to sort of be the I hate to use the word figurehead, the face of the UFC could either be Chael Sonnen or Forrest Griffin. I'm not saying that anyone said that. I'm just saying this is kind of me kind of reading the tea leaves. But if Chael Sonnen is the face of the UFC or Forrest Griffin is the face of the UFC, that's going to be two totally different UFCs. So what do you think about those two guys sort of taking that role, TJ?
Wow, that's a good question. With Chael Sonnen, he kind of has that WWE kind of mentality of wrestling and likes to bring forth, but he's a very intelligent guy. So if he could set that aside and using his intelligence about matching up people, because I think he measures people very well. He does very great commentating. I think if he was the face and he could set everything else aside, I think he could be the face of the UFC and it could be very successful. On the side of Forrest Griffin, that would be a different prospect, man. That guy's kind of out of left field sometimes too, and he kind of controls his emotions in that way. So I don't know what that face of the UFC would look like with him being in there. But I definitely do agree with you that there's writing on the wall about life after Dana, and I think he's I think he's actually we're starting to see it in a lot more of the scrum where he's talking about life after him and retirement. He was even talking about his kids and his wife, and he never does that like in scrums. Like he leaves his wife completely out. Like if you didn't even know the guy, if you just listen to talk, you never think he was married. Uh, so I mean, he's starting to see that, and you're starting to see him kind of making a turn here. So I'm interested to see what these next few months bring forth.
Jason, do you think either one of those guys could fill that kind of a role for the UFC, or are they going to go with somebody that's more suit and tie type guy?
You know, I think both of those guys will need people behind them to help them, guide them through the first couple of years, whether it be Chael or Forrest Griffin. I think one for Chael, he may be just a little too slick. I think he is definitely smart and articulate, but I think there could be a little bit too much of a car salesman type of attitude with Chael. I definitely think he would be a better pick than Forrest Griffin, because with Forrest Griffin, you don't see a lot of how shall we say, intelligence behind Forrest. I do love him. I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a good ambassador, but I'm not sure if he has that business acumen that someone like maybe a Chael Sonnen would have. But then again, you look at Chael Sonnen's real estate dealings in the past, and maybe they both have business problems. So.
Well, from Forrest, the thing with me and Chael, man, you know me and Chael. When Chael shows up, the circus definitely comes to town. But I think with Forrest, the problem with Forrest is he's a loose cannon. That kid goes off the reservation. I mean, he might start doing a scrum and just say, fucking run out like you would after a fight. He just take off. You're like, is that the end of the scrum? Is that the end of the press conference? Well, he just split. So, all right, let's get into the payoff perspective. Some of the stuff that you wrote about, we're going to save for when TJ and I do the fights, just because it makes a little more sense in the context there. So First I want to talk to you about let's just talk about 160 kind of abstractly, and how was the attendance? How was the gate? How are the pay-per-view numbers trending? Did you think it was a successful pay-per-view?
Well, I definitely think basically, let's get back to go to the attendance. The attendance was a little over 11,000, about almost 2.9 million, 3 million for the gate. From what I'm told, it's a little lower than it had expected. It 155, which was in December, did a little better. So there was some speculation that maybe the casinos didn't buy in as much as they usually do. So there might be some issues with that. As far as just some other numbers going down the line, bonuses were $50,000. I guess Brian Caraway wasn't there to lobby for people to get $65,000. But an interesting thing on salary, Mark Hunt, biggest pay raise. His last official report was getting 6 and 6, 6,000 to show, 6,000 to win. He gets a flat 160, no win bonus, but still that's a huge pay raise for him. Second on that list on pay raises, Cain Velasquez. He got you might remember UFC 155 in December. He was at 100 to win, 100 to show, 100 to win. He gets 400 flat, $400,000. Just to go on a little bit with those salaries, Junior Dos Santos gets a reduction in pay. He had been making the 400,000, and he goes down to 120,000 to show 120,000 for the win against Mark Hunt. So those are kind of the numbers. As far as pay-per-view buys, we did on the payout a little bit of a historical perspective on the heavyweights and how they do. And basically, the conclusion is if you have Cain Velasquez or Junior Dos Santos on your pay-per-view at the top, you're going to do well. Those guys average in the mid 550 range for pay-per-view buys, 550,000 pay-per-view buys. And despite the fact that attendance might be down, I do think that it was a pay-per-view which you still have some great heavyweight fights at the top, and you should expect something in the mid 500 range.
Let me ask you, since you were talking about Mark Hunt, that he got a pay raise, what was his deal with the no sponsorship? And we all kind of noticed that when we walked in with no fight shirt and with no sponsorship. What was going on with that?
So
he looked like he was on tough.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. He just had the bland UFC. I mean, that wasn't even like the newest UFC shorts. Those were like, oh, we got some in the back we could give you. Couple things. One thing is there could have been a issue with the fact that it wasn't clear whether or not he was going to get a visa for this fight. So you guys recall that Roy Nelson was prepared to step in if Mark couldn't get that visa. Other thing, which may lead into maybe a managerial issue, is the fact that his manager was trying to broker some deals at the weigh-in, when in fact all that information needs to be put in Thursday night, because Thursday night is the night that they turn in the shorts to the UFC, because they need to see them for how it will look on the broadcast. They need to approval of all those sponsors. So I'm not sure what really happened with respect to whether or not Hunt had any pre-existing sponsorship relationships, why he didn't have anybody. I mean, he was the co-main event. I'm surprised. I definitely am surprised, like you guys were, that he wasn't sponsored by anybody. Like no one could put on a shirt for him or anything like that. So that was one of the most surprising things of the night.
All right, so next up we're just going to go ahead and roll right into your stock up, stock down, because I want to actually talk about Cain Velasquez, so it works out that he's on your stock up, stock down. Number one on your stock up. Now here's the few things that you had in the payout perspective, so we're just going to kind of, mesh things here. Cain Velasquez, to me, seems like a guy who really is just kind of right there on the precipice of being this huge star for the UFC, but there's a few things getting in the way. You mentioned in the payout perspective, he really doesn't use his social media presence. You feel properly, so I'll let you get into that. But the other thing is, if the UFC could make their way into Mexico, which they should have, I don't want to say they should have done by now, but, if they could do that, that would be a huge thing for Cain. And then the third thing I kind of want you to touch on is, my concern with Cain is, and I tweeted this out, when he hits the rematch with Junior Dos Santos, if it's in November, that's going to mean that in the last 2 years he's fought 2 guys. 5 fights, Bigfoot Silva, Dos Santos only. Does that cause a problem for his brand? So I'll let you go ahead and hit the stock up on Cain.
Okay, first of all, I kind of talked about his social media presence. He doesn't really, he could be accused of someone who doesn't take advantage fully of his social media presence. Everything is here's my sponsor, MicroCloud. Here's my sponsor, Lugs. Here's my sponsor. There's nothing in there that will give some perspective on how you're doing. Like, I'm getting ready. I'm cutting some weight. I'm doing this. There's not a lot of pictures taken. There's basically a lot of things that clutter your timeline. And it's not interesting, and it's one of those things that once you follow it for a little bit and you see that they're all advertisements. I mean, you know how Twitter is trying to promote tweets right now. I don't like it. You get sick of it, and you might you'll be dropping Cain because he's not as personable on the Twitter. So that's kind of one of those things he needs to work on and kind of get more personable on that. With respect to Mexico. This is something that I'm going to be kind of touching on later on in an article on Payout Perspective. You have to look historically back at when he was prepared to fight Brock Lesnar at UFC 121, and they were touting him as a Mexican-American superstar. And if you recall and remember, he kind of was forced to kind of do a little bit of Spanglish, and you could sense some sort of apprehension, and he's not really fully into it. Like, if you think of the Brazilians who could go converse in and out of English to Portuguese very easily, like Anderson Silva or somebody else, Vitor Belfort, one of these guys. Cain is not, I mean, English is his first language, and Cain is not as fluent as that in mixing Spanish, and English. So when we talk about making inroads into Mexico, it's definitely great that the guy's last name is Velasquez and he's a Mexican American. But fandom will he get knowing that he's more American than Mexican? That's an issue that the UFC will have to kind of deal with and kind of structure. And then thirdly, about the two guys, I think that's just essentially just something that just happens, that he loses to JDS. He fights him again, gets the rematch immediately, and he fights Bigfoot. I mean, it just so happened how it happens, and definitely he'll get the trilogy, and hopefully from there on they can move on. I could definitely sense that it's hard to regurgitate these fights if they're not exciting and if there's no controversy or anything in them. So I could definitely see from the UFC's perspective they want to do this trilogy and then move on and maybe part ways and have them fight somebody else.
All right, talking about the trilogy, let's go with your next stock up, which is Junior Dos Santos, JDS. Now, you have him as a stock up, and even though I think he looked good on the fight, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in. I was talking to John because we were watching the fights together. I think he showed a little bit of vulnerability to me, and the fact that he did fight Mark Hunt, and Mark Hunt is definitely a tough guy, but with Junior Dos Santos being the way he is, do you think he kind of showed that he could be beat up a little bit, that he could get caught? Because I mean, he definitely looked like he was in the 3-round war too as well. So can you kind of touch on that as well?
Yeah, I think that I think Junior Dos Santos play is a very sensitive, and when I mean that, is that he is worried about what the fans think, and so definitely I thought that he showed some vulnerabilities in the exchanges with Mark Hunt. Definitely, he was taken aback once he hit Hunt in the first round with that looping right to the ear. Everyone thought that was over, and once Hunt kind of gave him the okay, come on, JDS knew he was down for a fight, and I do give Junior Dos Santos some credit because he heard the boos once he took down Mark Hunt, even though that's the correct strategy. He did go for the finish, which I do applaud, and I do think that he was kind of influenced by the fans to go after and take that chance. So with that being said, you are right, TJ. He definitely showed some signs of vulnerability, mainly because in the first and second rounds he was getting hit with that left hook. He was showing some he was getting caught a lot by Mark Hunt. So definitely that could play into the third fight with King.
Yeah, I mean, also the worst person you could ever fight before you have to fight Kane is Mark Hunt, because they couldn't be more different. You know what I mean? Like Mark Hunt, his cardio is I don't want to say it's questionable because he hangs in there. He's one of those guys like Roy Nelson. He looks like his cardio is going to fail him, and it kind of really never does. All right, up next in stock up is TJ Grant. I mean, talk about making the best of a huge opportunity. I didn't even think the guy deserved in a title eliminator fight. Not only did he deserve it, looks great, and takes Gray Maynard apart. So talk to me about TJ.
I didn't even, I haven't, he wasn't really on the radar for me in that lightweight picture. And here he comes, and I thought that Gray Maynard finally would get another shot at a lightweight title. And here comes TJ Grant, and he looked great. And, I'm happy for the guy because you recall from what Dana said at the press conference, if it was not a good fight, he would have gave that title shot to Josh Thompson, and that I wouldn't think that would be fair for TJ Grant, who probably trained knowing that maybe I could get a shot, and he looked great. And I actually watched that fight tonight, and just to look at it again, and he looked good, and he could pose a problem for Ben Henderson.
All right, moving on. Your next stock up is Vitor Belfort, and I'm not surprised you put him on there because not only his stock is up, but his TRT is up as much as his stock is. So let's go in there. I know there's a lot of been people back and forth, even after the fight. I mean, that's all everybody wanted to talk about was his TRT levels. And then the commission had even made a comment about it, about that they don't know if he would even get the option or the pass to get an exemption for the TRT in Vegas because of his failure in 2006. So, I mean, I agree with you. His stock is up, but with his TRT going on, I mean, that's kind of a question, but I would agree. So you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so basically, I have him as a stock up just because how great he looked, but definitely you touch upon the TRT issue, and it does pose. And then you also now thinking about it, maybe he shouldn't have been on this list because again he threatened to beat someone up after the in the post-fight press conference. But with that being said, he did put on a great performance, and the question is now, what do you do with this guy? Because he definitely, is in a picture for a title shot, but like you can't have this guy fight in Vegas. So where do you put this guy? But Vitor is definitely I mean that kick was just sensational. So props to him.
Yeah, and my question for you about Vitor before we go on to your next stock up is, what do you think about how much longer can he not talk about TRT? And I guess my big concern with it is if you're telling me that everything's on the up and up, and maybe he just gets tired answering the same questions, and I can respect that. But if you're telling me everything's on the up and up, then let's just put it all out on the table and say, it's almost like he doesn't want any of his accolades to be, he doesn't want TRT stealing any of his thunder. He wants it to give us the impression that all this is him and he's reinvented himself, which in fairness he has on some level because he didn't used to be a kicker. So can he continue to not talk about TRT and A, stay on your stock up list, but B, doesn't it harm him not talking about it?
I definitely think it harms him from not addressing the situation. I mean, it happened. Everybody knows. Everyone's asking the question. He should just come out and talk about it and be frank about what it was. I mean, it worked for Chael Sonnen for him to talk about it, and I just don't know if he fears that he's going to be caught up in something, and then he'll be caught up in some sort of what could be construed as him saying something where he shouldn't have. So I just think that he's concerned that he may be brought down as a steroid user, and everything is tarnished. So.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so your last stock up is a three-way tie: Mark Hunt, Donald Cerrone, and Jacare Souza. So we got Hunt, who lost, Cerrone, who looked good, and Jacare, who looked great. So give me your thoughts on those three guys and why you have them on stock up.
I think I think we talked about Mark Hunt a little bit. I think it was a great story for Hunt. Everybody was behind him. It was a good underdog story. If nothing else, it shows that you could, it shows a lot of things about like social media and how you could be influenced to get a fight, and definitely he made a lot of money, a big pay raise for Mark Hunt. As far as Donald Cerrone, the guy just, he is a guy who you want to watch fight. I mean, watching him fight KJ Noons and take him apart, and was one of the better fights, underrated fights of the night. And I thought that he just keeps on keeping on, and they could just keep sticking him in against whoever. And I think they were saying Josh Thompson it might be next, and that would be a great fight. And as far as Jacare, I love watching that guy. He has a Jushin Okami next, so maybe that might be a snore fest, but who knows? I mean, but like he has one of the. I mean, if you love watching jiu-jitsu and see how it's done, you watch that guy, and it's just amazing.
I agree. I think that as much as I don't want to see Cerrone fight Thompson, just because I think it might be a step down for Thompson, definitely not in competition level, just because I think he's earned a top 3 fight. I can't argue with the fact that it's going to be a fantastic fight. So I like these guys are kind of calling each other out on social media, and I think it's going to be one hell of a fight. Like I said, Thompson should be fighting at or near the belt. But I can't argue with watching that fight. So I'll turn it over to TJ for stock down.
All right, so moving on to the list you definitely don't want to be on with the stock down. Your first one is with Nate Diaz, and I don't need no introduction to this one. You just can jump into this.
Yeah, I think you guys probably had talked about it before, but when I haven't been here, but his whole tweets, and the fact of the matter is this, just number wise. Last fight he made $15,000. He was just fined $20,000. So and suspended three months, which basically means he can't do any appearances or whatnot. So that's what that's the big hurt. He can't make any sponsorship appearances, he can't make any UFC appearances. So he's in a deficit of $5,000, and that and basically unrepentant. So that's kind of that hurts all around. And the thing is, you thought that Nick was the worst Diaz brother. That's the thing. I mean, not you, but just people in general.
Yeah. No, and I would have to comment. I mean, when are these people going to learn to shut their mouth and move on? Or if you want to address something, do it in a professional manner. I mean, there's nothing wrong with addressing something, but just do it smart. I mean, getting fined $20,000, like you said, now he's in the hole $5,000. Can't do anything for 3 months. So what's he going to do now? I just don't understand. Some of these guys speak out their ass, and exactly you see what happens.
Well, yeah, and it's like you said, we're gonna move on to his manager next, Mike Kogan. But the thing I said on the podcast before, Jason, and I'll tell you this, is that Nate Diaz broke one of the top 10 man rules. You never let someone you don't care about cost you money, and he did that. And that's where I think I don't understand. Like TJ said, why are you getting involved in things that ultimately don't affect you?
Exactly.
It's cool to have your 2 cents, but it's like when it's starting to cost you money. Like you said, basically he paid the UFC $5,000 to fight last time.
Exactly.
If you think, monetarily, if you think about it from a financial standpoint. So, all right, let's move on to Mike Kogan. Doesn't seem like he's doing Nate Diaz any favors.
Yeah, Cesar Gracie probably could do as good a job as Kogan's doing. But basically, the two things that he's done wrong is, as a manager, you're supposed to do some, crisis management here, and he didn't really manage the crisis very well, and to basically go out and defend Nate and not basically give the same, hey, I'm sorry for what he said, that kind of thing, and then to go on the MMA Hour and just to be, it was one of those things where you just shake your head. So, anyway, that's just lessons 101 in managing a fighter. Just don't make him look bad.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to have your fighters back. If you're going to represent somebody, you definitely got to bring him, because he's what's bringing you money in too. So you definitely have to look at that. But moving on to the next one, which is Bigfoot Silva, and I touched on this earlier before you came on, because nothing makes me more upset than when you blame somebody else, or you try to divert all the attention on something happening, like blaming the referee, like he did after the fight. Clearly, he got stopped. I agree with the stoppage. I think he definitely took legal hits, not illegal, but legal hits in the fight. But he just went about it again. Just went about it the wrong way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he is now he is pretty much done for trying to get a title fight. He's going to have to work his way back up the ladder again and again, and especially if you have Junior Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez at the top, you're probably not going to see Bigfoot Silva get another shot in the near future. I mean, the heavyweight title picture is starting to bulk up with you got Cormier and you got Josh Barnett entering the picture. They're going to be in the mix somehow. Roy Nelson's in the mix too. So I mean, for Bigfoot Silva, this was his chance, and at least he wasn't a bloody mess. I guess that's the only thing you could say about this fight.
That's true. He wasn't, and it's one of those things with Bigfoot that we're giving so much props for what he did against Overeem, but he's got a hell of a resume. Took out Fedor, took out Overeem, but both of them obviously were not who they once were in their fights against Bigfoot Silva, but when you're looking at him on Fight Finder, that's what you see. You see W's next to those two guys. So I don't know. I agree with TJ in the sense that you go back to the drawing board. And you don't just sit there and say that you shouldn't have, start complaining. Although, like TJ and I talked about earlier, I do kind of agree with what he's saying. I just don't think it's relevant to his fight. I think that referees should be penalized. So, all right, up next we got Eddie Alvarez. Recently we've talked about him having a smoking gun. So how did he end up on your stock down when it seems like he's holding all the cards?
Well, essentially, the letter that he indicated he had is not really a big smoking gun. That's kind of what it amounts to. The overarching issue is him talking out about all these other fighters and their money problems as well. It's an issue because without getting too much into the whole lawsuit situation, it implicates a whole bunch of people, which basically brings them into the case, and they could be possibly brought in as far as like whether they depose or are witnesses to these things. But as far as what he's saying and what he's talking about Viacom and Bjorn Rebney and all these other things, these are issues where he's starting to generate other issues in his own lawsuit. So basically, with Rebney coming back, it's going to be a whole big mess, and I don't know if there's going to be any resolution to it aside from litigation, and it's just going to be very costly. And I do feel bad for Eddie, simply for the fact that it's going to cost him money, that he is can't recoup because he's not fighting, and that's an issue. The other thing that I wanted to just point out, he produced a document on Twitter which he claims that there was language, change. He had marked it off, his address. You could basically see the address, which is one of the issues that you never want to do, is produce something where you could have your home address out there. So I'm assuming that that's been taken off. But I thought when I opened the document, I was like, well, I could, you could see his address. If you wanted to go to his house, you could go there. Anyway, a lot of issues with that. I just did not. I know he thinks he has something up his sleeve, but the one factor is in litigation is like you don't want to talk about it if it's going to be something you could bring up in further litigation. And I don't know if he thinks that by talking and getting his point out there that he could help sway some sort of settlement or sway the public opinion. But the public's not going to help him in the court of law.
Yeah, I would. With this whole Eddie Alvarez, that was one of my topics last fight. I was just, to the point. It's starting to hurt both of them. I mean, it's nobody wants to see it no more. Nobody wants to hear about it. Everybody just wants to move on, and hopefully, for both their sakes, they can do that. But going to the last one, on your last stock down, yeah, you have Gray Maynard, and definitely. I think everybody thought that this was his time to shine, to really step it up and get a championship, and then T.J. Grant just kind of just went right through him. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and the other thing is his dog died, which is actually true. I think his dog died like the day after or something like that, which is another bad thing for Gray. But anyway, he definitely, it seems like he's like the he's like the fighter that gets right to the edge of being very successful and just can't get over that hump. With Frankie Edgar, he was almost there. He had the draw. Then he thought he'd won the one fight, and then he just can't get there. And then with the T.J. Grant, I mean, it's almost like Bisping in a way, where you got one more fight and then you get the shot, and then but you just can't get to that one. That one part in your career. So, I'm not sure how far away this puts down Maynard, but he was definitely. I mean, T.J. Grant really put him out. So that, I mean, I'm sure everyone was surprised at that.
Yeah, it's a shame with the whole thing that went down with Gray Maynard. It sounds like a goddamn country song, man. His dog dies, he gets his ass whipped. So I don't know, man. It's a tough week for him. Hopefully he'll be able to bounce back. He's a hell of a fighter. I mean, he's a smart guy in the sense that he seems to be really good at aligning himself with very top quality. Like, he seems to know what camp to go to. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, oh no, yeah.
He was a Team Quest guy, I believe. He was at Extreme Couture, when Extreme Couture was in its prime, and now he's at AKA. So, I mean, he knows where to go. He knows how to get top quality training partners. It's just like you said. I mean, he's got a little Chael Sonnen in his game, in him too, in terms of like he's got that one fight. Like everybody thought he beat Frankie Edgar. That one fight didn't get the decision, and then next comes back and then gets busted up by Frankie. So, all right, Jason, we'll get you out of here on this. What are you guys working on over at MMA Payout, and what do you see on the horizon? I did see a little something about the video game stuff, so I'm going to ask you real quick just where the video game stands in terms of where they're at in the process and when we can expect it, and then what else are you guys working on?
Well, basically, the video game portion is actually not written by me, but we actually have part 2. Wait in the next couple of days. That'll be out. So we are working on that. So stay tuned on that. And then as far as what we're working on, we're just wrapping up the UFC 160. Getting ready for 161, and then we have a couple other things down the pike. I just have to get confirmation from a couple people, and we should have some things out. Just stay tuned to MMApayout.com. So I don't want to leave you hanging, but definitely come and check the website out. We'll have more breakdowns on the ratings from UFC 160, the prelims as well, which should come out tomorrow. So that's something to look forward to.
That is definitely something to look forward to. So, folks, here's what I'm going to tell you about Jason Cruz. Someday down the road, TJ and I are going to be the Mike and Mike of MMA, and Jason Cruz is going to be the Darren Ravel. I can promise you that much. So keep listening to us. Keep paying attention to Jason at MMA Payout and at Dilettante, and we're the future of MMA without a doubt. All right, Jason, take it easy.
All right, John. TJ, thanks a lot. I can go to bed now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Right.
Bye-bye.
All right, so Jason told us a lot there, as he always does. So let's get into UFC 160, TJ. I mean, that's what we get together for, to talk about these fights. It was a hell of a night, in my opinion. It really was a strong main card, more so. I mean, the prelims were good. And Danny even said in the post-fight, sometimes the prelims carry the card, sometimes the main card carries the card. This was definitely one where the main card carried it. We'll start with the big boys. Heavyweight championship of the world. It was Cain Velasquez. It was Bigfoot Silva. It ended not as bloody as the first time, but pretty much with the same result. Cain takes out Bigfoot in the first, strikes, really barely even broke a sweat. Bigfoot had a lot to say afterwards. So give me your thoughts on the fight. We've talked a lot about it kind of abstractly here, but what did you think about the fight going in, and how did it play out in your eyes?
It's funny, though, even Bigfoot and Junior Dos Santos, both of these guys said that, that Cain's really not a stand-up fighter or doesn't really have the power that he needs to be. And look what he's done to these two guys. I mean, I think we can now say that Cain Velasquez does have great stand-up power. He has great boxing skills. And I mean, when he slipped with that left and connected and then landed with that right, man, it was like lights out for you. And he's smart. He's a heavyweight that is quick. He has a lot of movement, and he sets the pace of the fight. And when you do that with heavyweights like that, they just can't keep up with them. So I mean, he looked great. Finished it off in 1:21. His boxing looked great. He was attacking again. Tried for some takedowns. I couldn't really get him, but that just established the stand-up game for him. So, Cain Velasquez we just talked about this earlier. He's definitely on that verge of being one of the greatest heavyweights of today, or even the past.
And that's what everybody seems to think, that most pundits believe that Cain's going to be the greatest heavyweight of all time when it's all said and done. For me, the issue that I'm concerned with Cain is that we still haven't seen an answer for yet. I mean, the answer seems to be avoiding getting hit. But my question to you is the chin suspect, or do you think that he's a heavyweight and he's in there with bangers? And when you got a guy like Junior Dos Santos, I mean, Jesus, Junior Dos Santos threw a fastball that floored Mark Hunt. Now, to Mark Hunt's credit, he got his ass right back up because he's made of steel. But I mean, is Cain's chin the only hole that you see in his game?
No, I don't think it's.
Is it a hole?
I don't think it's really a hole. I mean, the first fight, yeah, he caught him, but I think, he caught that shot behind the ear. But then there was, was he hurt? Was he really healthy going in that fight? He had a lot of different stuff going on, but I don't really see it. I don't really see it as a whole. I think he can probably recover okay with it. But then again, I mean, when you are up against Junior Dos Santos and the heavyweight crowd, you're going to feel some power. And it could be lights out if they catch you. If they connect, perfectly like it did in the first fight, then, you're going to play it. But I don't think it's a huge hole in his game, no.
And I guess before we move on to the JDS fight, the concern is, are you getting burnout on Kane fighting the same guys, and are you? The other thing I wanted to say about his chin is he got dropped by Czech Congo as well, so he didn't get finished obviously, but that's where some of the the suspicion about his chin comes in. But are you getting burnout on watching him fight just Bigfoot and JDS, or is the alternative even worse? We know he's not going to fight DC. Barnett's just now coming into the division. No one's really clamoring to see him fight Frank Mir or Roy Nelson. Obviously, Hunt lost. So, I mean, if we start to look at this division, we're kind of waiting on Johnny Bones Jones to come up. So, I mean, are they putting him in with these guys because there's
nobody else?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're gonna draw a crowd, when he fights these guys. So, what do you think is the future for him? We know JDS is next, but I mean, are we just gonna what? Go ahead.
I would rather him, face Big Country. It's a fight that we haven't seen before, and Big Country has been finishing people. He's got great stand-up, and he even has some ground game. So I would like to see if Kane could take Roy down, how that would look like on the ground with Roy Nelson's jiu-jitsu. I mean, let's not forget that he's a world champion. I mean, he's fought some tough and beat people in tournaments. So I think I would rather see that than the Junior Dos Santos, and I'll tell you why. Because he finished Mark Hunt on Saturday, but I'm telling you, to me, he didn't really impress me that much. There was holes in that game. He's definitely showed that he can, with that left hand, that he can eat. He's going to eat some punches, and if you're fighting somebody that pushes the pace, if Mark Hunt, I think, could have pushed the pace a little bit more, it would have been a lot closer fight, and it could have been a different outcome. Somebody like Cain Velasquez, like he showed in their second fight. So I think there are holes in Junior Dos Santos in game, and I think from what I saw last time, I think I'd rather see Cain Velasquez fight Roy Nelson at this point.
Yeah, well, we're going to get JDS again, and I do agree with that. I mean, obviously, that's why we wanted to see Mark Hunt get in there, because he's got that puncher's chance. He swings for the fences. Roy Nelson does the same thing, and he's a little bit better of a grappler than Mark Hunt is. So I think that really is a better fight. No one likes Roy Nelson, I think, with the exception of you. Nobody really likes. I mean, he's got his fans, but I'm just saying that no one's. He's just a little engine that could. He's a big engine that could. I mean, he's the guy that no one really wants to see fight, but he deserves it. He really does. If a guy like T.J. Grant's getting a fight at lightweight, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but I mean, if he deserves it, then so does Roy Nelson at heavyweight. So, all right, moving on. Let's get to the JDS Mark Hunt fight. It was finished with a spinning wheel kick by JDS, and the punch was pretty much academic. So you said you saw some holes in Dos Santos's game. Now Hunt is a monster, and the reason why I say that is because he's tweeted pictures of his busted ass toe, and I didn't know in the fight, and even shortly after the fight, I probably couldn't tell you right now which toe it was. What I do know is he was still blasting kicks with both feet. So obviously he didn't give too much of a shit which one it was, because he was still throwing kicks in the second and third with both feet. So what do you leave this fight with? More respect for JDS, more respect for Hunt? Are you a little more skeptical about JDS?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more skeptical about him. Hunt caught him with. That left hand was landing with regularity on his. So I definitely think there's some adjustments need to be made. And we did see the Junior go to the ground a couple times, but it was like a late fashion. He maybe should have brought that forth a little bit more. And if he is a crowd pleaser, like Jason was talking about, then he needs to put that behind him, because if he's going to stand up and fight the crowd's fight, he's going to get caught again, or he's going to lose, or he's going to get beat up and look like he was in a damn train wreck. So I think he needs to use his all-around game if we want to see him catapult. I mean, we were seeing him knock out people, and just like we talked about this, when you start tasting that knockout power and you're knocking people out, you forget about the rest of the game you have, right? And then sometimes that's the demise of the fighters, is they forget about what got them there, and once they start knocking people out. And I think with Junior, if he doesn't go back to his roots, it could be a very long night against Cain Velasquez.
I agree, and I mean we talked about it before. Like you said, it's because you get lazy and you want to just the knockout's easier. At least swinging for it is easier if it never comes. It's like swinging for homers, man. If you get pop-ups, you think you're just this close to a home run when realistically, you could be working for a submission. That's hard work, man. It's hard to submit another man who's somewhat skilled in jiu-jitsu. Whereas if you throw enough bombs, you figure one's going to land. So for me, I do got to give Junior a little more kudos than you're giving him. The reason why is he pretty much fought Hunt's game and beat him at it. That was his intention. He wanted to stand up with him, prove that he could. And on top of being willing to stand up with him and beat him in his own game, he showed some diversity in his game by beating him with a kick he'd never thrown before. So it does show an open-mindedness to switch it up, and it does show, kind of an ability to finish a fight not in the fashion that you're accustomed to finishing it to. So I got to give him his props. Moving forward, obviously he's got Cain. For me, I'd like to see Mark Hunt. I don't know where the toe's going to leave him, but I'd like to see Mark Hunt fight Roy Nelson. They're talking about Josh Barnett coming in fighting Frank Mir. Honestly, I would rather see maybe Roy Nelson or even Mark Hunt get a Josh Barnett. This is going to be a common theme moving forward. Dana's calling for a lot of retirements. In my book, he might as well call for Frank Mir because I'm sick of this guy, man. As much as I like him, I just can't have him walking in that octagon and laying eggs, man. If this guy wants to be Mother Goose, he can tell some fucking stories to somebody else. I got no time for that shit, man. I'm ready to move on from Frank Mir if he's not going to go in there like a warrior. If he's going to get paid, and I hate to bring up the money, but if he's going to get paid $250,000 to just sit there and hug Daniel Cormier, why should I expect more from Barnett? The only difference is Barnett will try and finish him.
Yeah.
Barnett or Roy Nelson or even Mark Hunt, they're not going to fuck around with Frank Mir, man. They're going to take him out. So what do you think's moving forward? I mean, obviously we know what Junior's looking at. What do you think's moving? What is lays in wait for Mark Hunt, other than a podiatrist?
Well, I think with Mark Hunt, he kind of wrote his own ticket. I mean, it's a story that everybody likes. I mean, he's a brawler. He gets in there. He can finish you if he catches you with it. And he just stays in there and just fights to the end. Like you said, he's either going to knock you out or you're going to knock him out. One of the two things is going to happen. And saying that, Barnett might be better matchup for him. Roy Nelson, like you said. So there's a different ways you could play Mark Hunt. I mean, now that he has fans and a following, I think you can get with the story. I think you can get him some bigger fights and put him on, the number 2 fight, and people are going to watch it just because of that.
I agree. All right, let's move on to the next fight. It was Glover Teixeira. It was James Tahuna. I didn't like this fight from the beginning. I didn't think Tahuna deserved it. He got it, and what else he got was guillotined by Teixeira in the first very quickly. Mike Tyson, at the end of the day, the fight really just became, it looked like Glover Teixeira's goddamn birthday at the end of it. I mean, he got a quick win, barely broke a sweat. He got to see Mike Tyson. It was like, like I said, it was like his birthday. He got to pose, and it really didn't really get much of a sweat from James Tahuna in terms of being in any real trouble. So, I don't know. You could talk about the fight if you want to. The other question I'll pose to you is what's for Teixeira moving forward?
With Teixeira, I think there's a different ways you could put him. I think that he's a stand-up. I honestly would like to see him fight Henderson, because those two guys standing up, I think, would bring a war to the ring. And the wrestling that Teixeira has is not bad. So those match up, I think. Logistically, those two would match up very well together. Okay, if Rashad Evans wins, do you throw him in there with that? So Glover's at a good position because he's down there in the lower spot, but you can match him up with the top, 4, 5, 6 guy, and it's going to be a hell of a fight. And I think he's ready for that because, I mean, let's talk about this. He's not no spring chicken. He had some problems with his visa getting into the country, so he kind of had a delay there. He was fighting in Brazil. on some undercards there just to try to make a living, try to get back to the States. So I think with Glover, I think they need to go ahead and catapult him up a little bit and put him in the ring with a Rashad Evans or the Henderson, the winner of that one. Go ahead and match him up and then move on. Or I'll throw one out to you. If Gustafson catapults Machida, let's see Machida to share a fight.
I actually like that fight a lot. Now, anytime Machida gets in there, there's a worry that it's going to be a slow fight. He's going to be counterpunching, and then next thing you know, he knocks out a guy like Ryan Bader. So you never know what you're going to get with a Machida fight. Could be boring, could be exciting. I think Glover will bring the fight. I don't know. I mean, Jones has got a banged up toe. So do you put Gustafson and Teixeira together, and the winner gets Jones while he's rehabbing? There's just a lot of fights in that division. I just can't wrap my head around it, man. What they're doing with Jones. Like Alexander Gustafsson said on Twitter, he's fighting 85ers. I'm not crazy about that. Then I'm sitting here, I'm watching Shogun fight Rogerio. I can't get excited about a Rogerio fight for nothing. You got Henderson fighting Rashad. It's almost like you just wish you could juxtapose some of these fights a little bit differently. Maybe put Teixeira in there with Henderson, like you said. Put Rashad and Shogun in there. I just don't understand some of the matchmaking, and a lot of it comes down to timing. Joe Silva obviously knows his job better than I do, but it makes for some frustrating moments in 205-pound division. It seems like other divisions kind of play themselves out a little bit better than the 205-pound division does. So I get frustrated with it, but like you said, Glover's a star on the rise, but we got to stop feeding him the Fabio Maldonados and the James Tahunas of the world, man. It's time for this guy to be in there with top 5 light heavyweights. It's time for him to get in there with some hitters, and let's see what he can do. Even when he fought Rampage was on his way down. Let me get this guy in there with somebody that's going to look to take him out, like legit, and is ready to do it. All right, so let's move on. We're going to talk next about T.J. Grant. He fought Gray Maynard. The winner got Benson Henderson. The winner was T.J. Grant in very impressive fashion. It was the first round, 207 of it, and Grant put Maynard on his ass, and I think someone on Twitter tweeted something along the lines that Gray Maynard looked like a drunk dog looking for his bowl or some shit like that. I mean, I got a kick out of it. I'm sure I'm not even quoting the guy right, but he was just the way that he was on the ground, kind of almost Mike Tyson fashion, looking for his mouthpiece when Buster Douglas squared him away. Listen, I didn't like this fight when it was made. I didn't think that it should carry the juice with it that it did. But damn it if T.J. Grant didn't make a fool out of me by taking Gray Maynard apart. So talk to me about T.J. Grant. Talk to me about the fight.
Yeah, definitely. This is what I like about T.J. Grant is he was given the opportunity. There was a lot of talk about when Josh Thompson won that he should be the next one. T.J. Grant went in there and made a statement, and that's how you do it. If you want to become a champion, that's the kind of shit you got to do. You got to step up and take your game to the next level, and that's exactly what he did against Gray Maynard. He came in there wanting to knock him out, and he did. I mean, he stepped up to the hype, and he stepped up to all the pressure, and look what he delivered. So after that fight, I mean, I'm with you. I thought Gray Maynard was going to win that fight. TJ came in and proved everybody wrong, and rightfully so, has now the title shot against Henderson. And after that display, absolutely he should get it.
And listen, I'm a Thompson guy, and no disrespect to Josh Thompson here. Believe me, that's not what I mean. But T.J. Grant looked so impressive that at the end of his fight, you know who Josh Thompson was calling out? Donald Cerrone. He could have been calling out T.J. Grant, but he was calling out Donald Cerrone. He could have been like, listen, T.J. I mean, I understand it was a foregone conclusion, and that's kind of why I'm not coming down too hard on Josh Thompson. I don't want to make him like, his nickname's the Punk. I'm not trying to call him a punk. I'm just saying that Grant looked impressive. Nobody was calling out T.J. Grant after that fight. They were like, this guy's for real. And I guarantee you that if Benson Henderson was laying on his couch when he was watching that fight, his ass was sitting up when Gray Maynard got put on his ass. He kind of straightened himself up in that couch and said, wait, this T.J. Grant guy, I need to start taking him seriously. And I even tweeted that T.J. Grant's the anti-Chael because he's exciting in the octagon and boring as shit at the post-fight press conference. And Chael's the exact opposite. He's exciting at the post-fight and boring as shit in the octagon. So, I think Grant's a comer, dude. He's not going to sit there and gas up a fight. But, he's going to let you know that he deserves it with his left and his right. So, all right, let's move on to your guy, Donald Cerrone. He got KJ Noons, which Somebody's going to have to explain KJ Noons to me because all I've ever seen is watch this guy get his ass whipped, and he keeps getting significant fights. I mean, listen, I've been done with the guy since Crazy Horse knocked him out. I was finished with him that day. I was like, I've never seen anything like that. Crazy Horse knocked him out and then did the play-by-play of him knocking him out with Noons. The whole thing to me was a fiasco. I never really took Crazy Horse Bennett all that seriously, and when he knocked out KJ Noons, I stopped taking KJ Noons seriously. So it was a decision, 30-27s across the board. It was 130-26. Are we done with KJ Noons? And talk to me about Cerrone moving forward. It's going to be Thompson, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it will be Thompson, and that's going to be an interesting fight because, again, those two guys will come in and brawl and mix it up, and both of them, if they want to take it to the ground, they both have great ground skills. Where it could be interesting anywhere. Like it could be actually an exciting fight if it goes to the ground or standing up, because they're just so quick and moving around. I mean, if you look at it, Cowboy Cerrone on the ground was wrapping around and moving. He just looked quick. I mean, he was a lot faster than KJ Noons, and he just displayed some great wrestling, some ground and pound, and even some stand up. So overall he looked great. KJ Noons, I believe that's now 4 in a row that he's lost. Surprising that he came over, but the only thing you can say about KJ Noons is when he steps in the ring, he is going to fight. He's going to bring the fight. It's not usually boring. He doesn't have any, you won't hear too many boos during this kid's fight, and I think that's what they were bringing him over for because he does have that potential, but that potential wasn't there against Cowboy. So next for Cowboy is probably Thompson. KJ might get one more fight in the UFC. If not, they might cut him already. But, they might give him one more to give him a chance, to see if he can turn it around. And if he does, good for him. But the talk is going to be that Cowboy fighting and Thompson.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'm not a huge KJ Noons fan. I'm not as big a Donald Cerrone fan as you are. But like I said to Jason, as much as I think that Josh Thompson deserves more, I can't argue with that fight, man. I would love to watch Cerrone and Thompson fight. I think that Thompson and TJ Grant should be fighting. I think Anthony Pettis should be fighting Preston Henderson, but I'm not trying to be repetitive. So I'll take Cerrone and Thompson. I mean, who would complain about that? All right, so let's get to the prelims. We don't have to talk about every fight, but coming out of the fight, it seemed to me Mike Pyle was a story. Dennis Bermudez was a story. I liked Robert Whitaker because during the fight it seemed like he was insane for leaving his left hand down, but it pretty much nullified Colton Smith's takedowns. So, again, we got Khabib. Every time, if I'm sitting here talking to somebody, I can crush this kid's last name. As soon as I have to pronounce it on this podcast, it destroys me. Khabib Nurmagomedov beat Abel the Killer Trujillo. So there were some good fights on the prelims. I want to get your thoughts on it. I will say this. I think the most impressive most impressive performance on the prelims was George Roop. He battled some early adversity in round 1, then took Brian Bowles out, a former WEC champion. So what did you like about the prelims?
I mean, yeah, there were good fights. They weren't outstanding. The main card was definitely the winner here. But on the prelims were some great fights. I mean, you had some split decisions, some TKOs. Mike Pyle was a surprising one to me. I didn't really, even though it was a split decision, I mean, the guy's not a spring chicken, and beating Rick Story is to say something. I think that fight could have went to Rick's side as well. But I would have to agree with you. Roop beating Brian Bowles, I mean, adversity. I mean, he fought through the first round. He pretty much lost that first round and was almost out of it, and then comes in and wins by TKO punches around number 2. I think that was the most exciting one to come off the prelim.
And the internet's talking about George Roop. They're talking about him fighting. Who do they have? Oh, Scott Jurgensen. So I like that fight a lot.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad fight at all. I mean, the two stand up going at it. Jurgensen has pretty good chin, has a damn great chin on him. So, and he's got some great stand up skills, and we saw that up against Uriah Faber this last fight. So, yeah, actually, that matchup would actually be pretty good.
And in terms of Mike Powell, they're looking at Gunnar Nelson. What are your thoughts on a Mike Powell Gunnar Nelson fight?
Gunner. Yeah, I think actually that would probably be a pretty good matchup too. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight because I don't think we've seen a lot of the Gunner that everybody's hyped up to see. You know, his last fight was good, but it just wasn't great. I think there's a lot of potential there, so I think that would be a pretty damn good fight, actually.
And the other one that the internet's talking about a little bit, we've already kind of put this guy in a fight already, being Joe Silva, but they're talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib, your last name kills me every time. Nurmagomedov. I think I said Mama in there somewhere. This guy's last name just is destruction for me. Anyway, they got him fighting Cerrone. So in terms of what is just in the world, that really makes like more of a that fight makes a little bit more sense to me in terms of Khabib kind of cracking the top 10, Cerrone at 6 or 7. I see you shaking your head. Josh Thompson would be a better fight, but I don't know, man. Doesn't that fight make a little bit of sense too?
I don't know, man. Yeah, he has to get his chance. Every fighter that's making the climb up has to break into the top 10 somehow or some way, right, if they want to make it. And Cowboy Cerrone right now is somebody out there that just fought doesn't have a fight next that's in that middle to lower section that you could break in on. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad fight to watch, but I think if you're higher up in that way, if you're Cowboy, then you're pushing to fight somebody up there that you can to make your name if you want to make another title run.
I agree. For me, while I really want to see the Thompson-Cerrone fight, my only problem with it is that I don't know that Cerrone deserves a top 3 fight and Josh Thompson's top 3. And Josh Thompson definitely deserves a top 3 fight. So that's where it gets a little crazy for me. All right, so that was pretty much it for 160. A great card. I don't know about great. It was a really good card. I enjoyed it. I wish that Kane would have been a little more definitive against Bigfoot. But, you know, if Bigfoot wants to see a proper stoppage, he could pop in the tape of the first fight when he got bloodied and battered. So if he thinks, you know, I think that Kane beat the shit out of him enough in the first fight to carry over to the second fight. So
yeah.
Collectively, he got 2 ass whippings. Whether you want to put, you know, add them up and divide them by 2, go ahead. So, you know, that's, to me, that's the one thing that kind of I wish it would have been a little bit more definitive. But, you know, it is what it is. We're going to get our trilogy fight, and there you have it. All right, so let's go ahead and put an end to this thing. We're going to go ahead and finish strong. I will start. And I'm going to go ahead and...
You want to start? Yeah, you want me to?
You know what? Go ahead and start.
Yeah, because I want to talk about yours a little bit, too. My finish strong is this. It's just Bigfoot, and this goes out to all fighters. I mean, if you take an ass whooping, call it what it is, that you got beat, and move on. Swallow your pride, and don't blame anything, because it makes you look weak when you try to blame somebody else for losing, or that it was stopped too early. You know, like you said, if you didn't want the fight to stop and you were taking punches, then you should defend yourself and try to do something about it instead of complaining at the end. I just think it's embarrassing to you as a person and as a fighter, being that kind of statue in the ring, in the octagon, that you would come out and say something like that afterwards. You know, if it was really controversy, then maybe I could see your point, or even, you know, the refs aren't the greatest in the world, and we know that. We know that this is still a young sport. We don't have the judges right. We don't have the referees completely right. There's only a few of them out there, and it's still a young sport. So don't put the blame on something else when you fail to deliver your own game plan. It just makes everybody around you look bad. So that's my finish strong.
Well, and a couple of things too to just kind of jump on top of what you're saying is where I have a problem with it is, one, if the roles were reversed, would you think that was an early stoppage? If you're Bigfoot Silva, if you were doing that shit to Cain Velasquez, would you be like, oh, it was, you know, an early finish? One, and two, the one thing that I always default to is that referees are not trying to stop fights early. If anything, they're trying to stop them late. So if you don't want the fight stopped, they're talking right to you. Give them some sort of an indication. I've never seen a fight stopped when a guy was getting hit and he gave a thumbs up or he gave any sort of an indication to a referee that he was still in the fight. Yeah. I've never seen a referee stop a fight under those circumstances. So why not do that? So, you know, if you're taking 10, 11, 12, 13 hits directly to your head, he's in there to protect you. So either protect yourself or let him protect you. But either way, there's no room for complaints. All right, my finish strong is about a tough conspiracy that I think may be in work. Now, you know me, I'm a conspiracy theorist when it comes to MMA. And I know that I kind of tipped my hand a little bit with you in terms of you knowing what the subject was, but I'm going to go a little rogue on you, and then I'll let you kind of pull it together. I'm going to go way out there and put the tinfoil hat on and all of it, and then I want you to kind of pull me back and make this a reasonable conspiracy theory. I like the notion that somewhere the very unpopular Brian Caraway is sort of the Tanya Harding of this situation, and he's the one that kind of hired somebody to bust up Kat Zingano's knee so that his girl Misha could get the tough spot. Because dude, what else is there to think about Caraway, man? He's been doing every single thing wrong that you could possibly do wrong. Luckiest guy in the world, who takes his luck and then just shits all over it by getting involved in any number of other things. This would be the perfect end to Brian Caraway's couple weeks of like bullshit. I mean, there's already a controversy that he elbowed Kat Zingano, so what are we going to put it past him to blast her in the knee so that Misha gets the tough spot? I'm not making accusations here. I'm just saying it's possible. But furthermore, what are your thoughts on the fact that it could be it does benefit the UFC that Misha Tate is the coach and not Kat Zingano? So when you first saw that, what were your thoughts?
When I first saw it, I thought, okay, maybe, I actually did think that something might have happened or, it'll pay off. But I believe there was a picture floating out there already showing her in the hospital with that. And then she said it snap, crackle, pop. And when I read what she said about it, then I was like, okay, yeah, she really did get hurt. She kind of fucking ran into some bad luck. And that's when my conspiracy went out the window. So, I mean, yes, it benefits the UFC. So I'm sure there's somebody in the background thinking, now we're gonna run with this because Misha Tate's gonna step up. We can have her step right in and without missing a beat and even get more publicity out of it. So, I mean, it was just a bad luck, man. I don't think it was anything else than that.
The only thing that would have made this more perfect is if, by the grace of God, Michelle Old would have been let out of her Bellator contract, tried out for Tough when Misha wasn't the coach, made it to the Tough House, and then that was the only thing that would have made this even better. Listen, we're having fun here, but it's unfortunate for Kat. She beat Misha fair and square, busted her up, in fact, earned a title shot. I'm sure she's still going to get it. Hopefully. We talked about it earlier that she should probably wait it out so that she's at full strength when she fights for the belt. You don't want to go half-ass against Ronda Rousey, but I hope she doesn't lose. I hope she doesn't find herself in an Anthony Pettis situation where she earns a title shot, then takes a filler fight, loses it, and then kind of the shot disappears. All right, so yeah, we got a lot of things coming up. I'm actually kind of interested in what the hell Jason was talking about, so I may be keeping my eye on MMA Payout more so than I actually have been. We're going to try and get our asses up to Vegas for the Fan Expo. Now that Forrest Griffin is going to be inducted with Stephan Bonner, I'm even more excited to go. We're going to try and have some guests on. We're going to try and nail our format down, start to branch out to some different ways and mediums for you guys to listen to us. So another one in the books, TJ. It was a good one. So final thoughts on 160 and what we have coming up.
160 I think was a good card overall. I mean, we saw some fighters step it up and some outcomes that we were surprised with and not so surprised with. So overall, I mean, it was great. It definitely was worth the money we paid for it. And with the things coming up, we got a lot of things coming up. I'm gonna start working on something out with TRT, so that's gonna be in the next couple weeks and months to come. So I'm interested in doing that and keeping up with all the fights and the UFC's coming up, and then super excited for the July 4th weekend and up in Vegas with with the Fan Expo. So I'm really interested in doing that.
All right, so coming up next couple of weeks, just to keep you guys involved or up to speed. Nogueira's fighting Verdum once again. It's going to be UFC on Fuel TV 10. We'll obviously do a preview for that. Rashad Evans is fighting Dan Henderson June 15th. It's UFC 161. And then the aforementioned July 4th card with Anderson Silva fighting Chris Weidman with the Fan Expo as well. All right, so keep it glued to the Hot Cage Podcast. Follow us at the Hot Cage Daily. And go to CageWallObviously.com to get all your news and info. So as always, we'll end this one as we end them all. Keep your chin down and your hands up.